My girlfriend, Olivia, suddenly changed her iMessage name to The Moon Is Mine. Later, I added her male assistant, Leo, and discovered his nickname was Moon. That night, I pushed her away when she tried to get close. Maybe we shouldn't get married, I said. She panicked instantly, asking if she'd done something wrong. I knew her mindset. You could hit her, you could scream at her, but you couldn't stop her from marrying me. She'd been dreaming of this for a decade. I just smiled and said, I was just kidding. She finally let out a sigh of relief. But the moment she was out of earshot, I called her biggest rival, Chloe Davenport. I'm getting married on the 10th. I need you to crash the wedding. Crash the wedding? Chloe scoffed. Everyone knows Olivia Carrington loves you to death, that you're her whole world. If you run out of your own wedding with me, are you trying to kill her? Hearing this, a sarcastic smile touched my lips. Loves me to death? Her whole world? And yet she's still hiding someone else from me. Just tell me, are you in or out? Chloe's tone was arrogant. What's in it for me? I spoke slowly. I hear your grandmother's health isn't great, and she's been pressuring you to get married. Crash my wedding, and you get to humiliate the Carringtons and give your family what they want. 2 birds, 1 stone. I heard her low laugh on the other end of the line. A moment later, she replied with a single word, deal. That evening, Olivia came home early. Perhaps my threat to call off the wedding had scared her, because she was incredibly clingy all night. What's wrong? I asked. She just hugged me tighter. Don't ever joke like that again. I'd die. I closed my eyes, my expression unreadable. When I found out the truth about Olivia, a part of me died, too. Now it's her turn. Only then will we be even. For the next few weeks, Olivia skipped work entirely, following me everywhere, barely letting me out of her sight. The night before the wedding, our friends threw us a joint bachelor and bachelorette party. My stomach was acting up, and when Olivia saw I was in pain, her eyes filled with concern. She took my hand, ready to take me home to rest. But her friends wouldn't hear of it, surrounding us. Olivia, we all came out just for you. You can't be such a party pooper. No matter how Olivia and I tried to explain, we couldn't argue with them, so I gave in and went back to the couch. Olivia immediately called her assistant, asking him to bring a warmer jacket for me. Half an hour later, it was Leo who pushed open the door to our private room. Seeing him, Olivia's brow furrowed in panic. What are you doing here? Leo's voice was timid. Mr. Young had an emergency, so he asked me to bring this over. She wanted to tell him to just leave the jacket and go, but her friends dragged her into a drinking game. Worried about leaving me alone while I was unwell, she asked Leo to stay and keep an eye on me. The game began and Olivia won the very first round. She drew a card and read it aloud to the group. The winner of round 1 may choose any person of the opposite sex to take a penalty shot. There were only 2 men in the room, myself and Leo. Everyone knew my stomach was killing me, and besides, Olivia loved me too much to ever make me drink hard liquor in this state. All eyes turned to the nervous, uncomfortable-looking Leo, but Olivia hesitated. Let's pick another card, she said. I'll break the rules. You can all pick any car from my garage. As tempting as a free sports car was, her unusual indecisiveness made her friends even more curious. They sensed something was off, and after exchanging a look, they refused to back down, insisting she had to choose someone. With everyone watching, she hesitated for a long time before finally saying a name. I choose to punish Ethan. The unexpected choice sent a shockwave through the room. Everyone stared in disbelief. The pain had already drained the color from my face, but at her words, I lifted my head and gave her a long, hard look. My meaningful stare made Olivia squirm. She was about to stand and explain, but I had already taken the glass from the server. With a cold smirk, I tilted my head back. Just as the chilled liquor touched my lips, a hand shot out from the side and snatched the glass from my grasp. It was Chloe, who must have slipped in unnoticed. She downed the entire glass of liquor in one go. Turning the empty glass upside down for everyone to see, she looked at Olivia with a mocking grin. Sorry, I was thirsty. Didn't mean to interrupt your fun, Miss Carrington. But hey, it's an honor to take a shot for a handsome man. The sight of Chloe irritated Olivia, and her taunt was the last straw. She stood up, pulling me behind her protectively. My relationship with Ethan is none of your business. You're an outsider. After tomorrow, he'll be my husband, so I suggest you stay far away from him. Chloe softly repeated the words. Tomorrow? Husband. A cryptic smile played on her lips. No one else in the room understood what she found so amusing, but I did. I glanced at the clock on the wall. The hands pointed to midnight. It was a new day, my wedding day. It was 2 in the morning by the time we got home. Seeing my pale face, Olivia rushed to explain. Ethan, Leo is severely allergic to alcohol. He can't drink at all. That's why I... All this time, Olivia had never told me that she'd slept with Leo, a twisted mistake she never mentioned, let alone the fact that she was pregnant. She thought I was completely in the dark, which is why she was bold enough to have Leo around me at all. But there's no such thing as a perfect secret. I knew everything, yet I had to keep playing my part in her charade. Just like now, pretending to be clueless as I asked about Leo's condition. Olivia was silent for a long time before finally shaking her head and saying she didn't know. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. That inexplicable sound made the already guilty Olivia even more flustered. She quickly changed the subject. Ethan, we're getting married in just a few hours. We should get some sleep, okay? I looked up, surveying the room with a mix of emotions. I'm too nervous to sleep. Since we're moving out tomorrow anyway, why don't you help me pack? Olivia agreed to whatever I wanted. We stayed up all night, sorting through every photo we'd ever taken, every gift we'd exchanged, and all the mementos from our 20-plus years together. With each item she unearthed, a memory would surface, and her eyes would fill with a nostalgic smile. Ethan, this scarf you knitted for me, I could never bring myself to wear it. Look, it's still brand new. And this notebook, it's my diary from high school. Do you remember it? She went on excitedly. I even kept all our plane tickets. Remember that time we hit 3 countries in 2 days? You were so exhausted you could barely keep your eyes open. She never noticed that the man sitting across from her hadn't smiled once. By morning, dozens of boxes filled the living room. Tradition dictated the bride and groom shouldn't see each other before the ceremony, so Olivia had to return to the Carrington estate. Before she left, she held me tightly. I don't want to go, but in just a few hours, I'll be your wife. Ethan, promise me you'll never, ever leave me. I'd die without you. I let her hold me, my eyes downcast, saying nothing. I couldn't make that promise because today was our last goodbye. After her sports car pulled away, our butler approached me. Sir, what should I do with all these boxes? Without looking up, I headed for the stairs. Burn them, I said flatly. Burn them all. The wedding, 3 months in the making, began with a flourish of celebratory music. All eyes were on Olivia as her father walked her down the aisle. The guests, who had been anticipating this moment, looked on in awe. Olivia's eyes were filled with adoration. The thought that her lifelong dream was finally coming true made her heart pound in her chest. I took her hand from her father's, and we stood together in the spotlight, listening to the officiant begin the ceremony. In front of all our friends and family, Olivia felt like she was floating on air. She eagerly said, I do, her voice trembling with an excitement she couldn't hide, which drew a warm laugh from the crowd. The officiant continued, Ethan Miller, do you take Olivia Carrington to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and to cherish, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do you part? The I do, that was supposed to follow never came. A moment of silence hung in the air as every curious eye in the room turned to me. A sudden jolt of fear shot through Olivia. She looked up at me quickly, only to find that I wasn't looking at her at all, but staring intently at the doors at the back of the hall. She followed my gaze but saw nothing but the dark, closed doors. As the scene verged on chaos, the officiant cleared his throat and began to repeat the vows. He was only halfway through when the doors were thrown open from the outside. The officiant jumped, his voice trailing off until it was nearly a whisper. At the exact moment the doors opened, my voice boomed through the microphone, echoing across the entire venue. Because there's someone else I want to marry. The words reverberated through the hall, sending a shockwave of gasps and murmurs through the crowd. Before Olivia's horrified eyes, I ripped the boutonniere from my lapel and ran, without a moment's hesitation, toward the woman who had agreed to help me escape. Amidst a shower of rose petals, under the gaze of hundreds of guests, and right in front of her sworn enemy, Chloe Davenport, who had been waiting for this moment, was swept away by the runaway groom. The wedding march continued to play on a loop from the piano, but the groom was gone. A moment of stunned silence was followed by an eruption of chaos, the entire hall exploding with noise. Only when we had completely disappeared from view did the stunned Olivia finally snap back to reality. Fueled by the uproar of the crowd, a firestorm of rage consumed her, incinerating every last shred of her composure. She clenched the wedding ring in her fist and ran after me, completely unhinged. The bewildered guests followed, rushing out behind her. As she reached the bottom of the grand staircase, a black and gold convertible sped past. From the passenger seat, I tore off my tuxedo jacket and tossed it back toward the crowd. My triumphant laughter carried on the wind. Olivia, you should be marrying the father of your child. I'm out. Hearing this, the color drained from Olivia's face, her expression a mask of pure terror. She reached out as if to grab me, crying, "No, Ethan!" But her hands only closed on the empty air where my jacket had fallen. Her parents rushed to her side, their faces grim. "What was Ethan talking about?" her father demanded. "What child? Are you pregnant?" In an overlooked corner of the crowd, a pale-faced Leo Vance collapsed to the ground. A chorus of screams echoed through the air. If performing on stage at Lincoln Center was the proudest moment of my life, then escaping my own wedding in front of hundreds of people was by far the most liberating. I felt like a survivor breaking free from a long darkness, shouting and waving at everything we passed as if I were on a victory tour. Beside me, Chloe held my other hand tightly, her normally aloof eyes now shining with a warm, brilliant light. The sports car weaved through the bustling streets of Manhattan and into a narrow side alley. Chloe, worried I'd get hit by a low-hanging branch, quickly pulled me back down into my seat. Still high on the thrill of my escape, I threw an arm around her shoulder and laughed. "Thanks." She leaned in close, her lips near my ear, her voice laced with amusement. The car finally stopped in a public square. Our driver, Alex Hayes, turned around from the front seat with a grin, holding out a hand to Chloe. "Mission accomplished, Ms. Davenport. Payment, please." Chloe tossed him a set of keys, then leaned over to grab a fresh jacket from the glove compartment, helping me put it on. Seeing the notoriously proud Chloe Davenport waiting on someone, Alex let out a whoop. The untouchable Chloe, brought to her knees by love. If I sent a picture of this to the guys, Chloe grabbed an empty box and playfully threw it at his head, cursing at him with a smile. Alex dodged it, laughing as he jumped out of the car. He backed away, waving. "All right, I won't keep you from your business. Congrats, you two. Happy wedding day." The term brother-in-law snapped me back to reality. I narrowed my eyes. "What's all this about? We're not married." Chloe, holding my left hand, raised her right and pointed to a large building across the square. I followed her gesture. The words City Hall were carved above the entrance. I never would have guessed that this would be the final destination of my great escape. I had promised Chloe that if she helped me, I'd be with her, but in my mind, that meant dating for a while first. Seeing how fast she was moving, I hesitated. "We're getting married? Right now?" Chloe squeezed my hand, her tone matter of fact. "Of course." I chose my words carefully. "Don't you think this is a little rushed?" Seeing the doubt in my eyes, Chloe stood on her toes to meet my gaze, a knowing smile on her face. "I'm just worried that if we wait, Mr. Miller here might find someone else to help him run away from another wedding. Then all my effort would have been for nothing, wouldn't it?" I immediately defended myself. "I'm a man of my word." Chloe just nodded, unconvinced, and started pulling me toward the building. "Then let's go." Seeing my hesitation, Chloe turned back, using a line she had clearly prepared. "Look, Olivia Carrington is completely unhinged. If we don't get this marriage license today, I guarantee she'll show up at my penthouse tonight with a team of thugs to kidnap you. Then this whole thing really will have been for nothing." With anyone else, I'd call it an exaggeration, but knowing Olivia, she was absolutely capable of something like that. At that thought, all my hesitation vanished. I grabbed Chloe's hand and we ran toward City Hall. It wasn't until we were inside the main hall that I remembered something important. We can't just get married empty-handed. We don't have any of our documents. Chloe simply reached into her purse, pulled out a folder with all the necessary paperwork, and handed it to me. I stared at the documents in my hand, my eyes wide. "Where did you get my driver's license and birth certificate?" She didn't hesitate to name her accomplice. "It was Ryan. I told him you asked me to do this. He said he didn't want to see you walk into the Carringtons' trap either. So it was Ryan." I suddenly remembered how he'd insisted on holding onto my briefcase for me before I left for the ceremony. It all made sense now. We definitely stood out among the other couples waiting to get their licenses. I could hear the clerks whispering to each other. But Chloe had sharp hearing, and after a moment, she started to stifle a laugh. I looked at her, confused. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, "They're comparing you to the pictures of the runaway groom that are already all over the news." I instantly remembered the swarm of reporters as we fled the hotel. They must have gotten plenty of high-definition shots. I felt a flush of embarrassment. Seeing my ears turn red, Chloe couldn't hold back her grin. She put on a serious face. "If Mr. Miller is feeling shy, I can offer a shoulder to hide behind." Her teasing had the opposite effect. I stood up straighter, muttering under my breath, "Let them look. What's there to hide? It's not every day you see someone run out on their own wedding. Most people don't have the guts. Chloe nodded enthusiastically in agreement. After we finished the paperwork and it was approved, we headed over to the photo booth for our official license picture. It was my first time doing this, and doing it with Chloe of all people, I felt a little stiff. She straightened my jacket, then pulled a stunning, brilliant watch from her purse and carefully fastened it onto my wrist. As someone who knew luxury goods, I recognized it instantly. It was the Patek Philippe that had sold for $20 million at Sotheby's last month. A flicker of shock crossed my face as I stared at her. "You were the one who bought this watch?" Chloe raised an eyebrow, teasing me. "Yes and no. To be precise, it's a wedding gift from my grandmother to her future grandson-in-law. She also asked me to pass along a message for you." I was confused. "What message?" Chloe grinned. She says, "Thank you, Mr. Miller, for being willing to take this little hellion off my hands. I am eternally grateful." After we got our marriage license, Chloe drove me straight to the Davenport estate. Just as she'd predicted, the normally quiet front gate was blocked by a crowd. Olivia was there with the whole Carrington clan and a group of their friends, blocking our car. Chloe rolled down her window, looking over the imposing crowd. Her eyes landed on Olivia, her tone deceptively casual. "Well, if it isn't the Carringtons, to what do we owe the pleasure of this visit to our humble home?" Seeing her feigned innocence, Olivia gritted her teeth. "Chloe Davenport, give me back Ethan, or I swear this isn't over." Seeing Olivia's face flush with rage only made Chloe's smile widen. "Miss Carrington, have we ever not been at each other's throats? When has it ever been over between us? Bring whatever you've got. I'm always ready for a fight. As for Ethan, well, he's my husband now, so I'd advise you to be the one who stays away." Her words sent murmurs through the crowd, and a look of confusion crossed Olivia's face. "What do you mean, husband? He's my fiancé. When did he become your husband? Did crashing my wedding send you into some kind of delusion, Chloe?" Olivia's sputtering rage clearly delighted Chloe. She pulled out her phone, opened a photo of our marriage license, and held it out the window for everyone to see. "Don't accuse me of lying, Miss Carrington. Ethan and I are legally married, and since you're all here, you might as well admire our wedding photo. We're both quite pleased with it. It's brand new, fresh off the press." The crowd surged forward to get a better look. More compelling than the picture of us smiling was the official seal of the city of New York at the bottom. After a moment of scrutiny, one of Olivia's friends stammered, That looks like a real marriage license." The color drained from Olivia's face. She lunged forward, snatched the phone from Chloe's hand, and stared at the screen in disbelief. Unable to accept what she was seeing, she threw the phone to the ground in a fit of rage, shattering the screen. Watching the phone clatter on the pavement, Chloe feigned a look of distress and turned to me. "Darling," she broke the phone with our marriage license on it. "Whatever will we do?" From inside the car, my voice was calm. "We have the physical copy, don't we?" Chloe's face lit up in mock realization. She smiled, pulling the official document from her purse and waving it from inside the car. "Now, does everyone believe that Ethan and I are married? This is a private matter between husband and wife. What right do any of you outsiders have to interfere?" Thinking back to the party, everyone in the crowd suddenly understood the meaning behind Chloe's cryptic smile the night before. This wasn't a spontaneous act. It had been planned all along. This revelation hit Olivia even harder than my initial escape. She peered through the car window, but could only see the back of my head. A wave of agonizing realization washed over her, and she cried out, "Ethan, you planned this all along, didn't you? You were always going to run." Hearing her desperate cry, my expression remained unchanged. I admitted it without hesitation. "Yes, I planned it a long time ago." Chloe smiled sweetly at her and added, "In fact, we planned it the day you went for your prenatal checkup with the baby's father. You even came to pick Ethan up right after our meeting. It was that day he left his coat behind. Remember? That was over 2 months ago." To know that I had been planning to leave her for that long was a blow like a physical knife wound, piercing straight through Olivia's heart. The pain was so sharp she could barely stand. "Why would you do this to me? Why didn't you just tell me?" she pleaded. Faced with her questions, I finally let out everything I'd been holding back. "What about you, Olivia? Why did you do this to me? Did you think I was so stupid I wouldn't find out? You paraded Leo right in front of my face. If you care about him so much, why didn't you just break up with me instead of cheating? You cheated, you got pregnant, and you hid a 5-month pregnancy from me. What's so wrong about me running away from that? What right do you have to question me?" Every word struck her like a blow. Olivia never imagined I knew. A torrent of guilt, panic, and regret washed over her. She lunged at the car window, babbling incoherently. No, Ethan, listen to me, please. I didn't know I was pregnant until the company physical. My grandmother found out first. She's the one who insisted I keep the baby. Even now, she was still blaming everyone else. I was utterly disappointed. I closed my eyes and cut her off, my patience gone. Right, it's always someone else's fault. The 3 contracts you sabotaged, the 13 people you had fired from the planning department, the $30 million necklace you bought for him at auction, that kiss in the hallway, the way you held the umbrella over his head instead of mine in the rain, that glass of ice-cold liquor you handed me at the party when you knew my stomach was hurting. None of that had anything to do with you, did it? Olivia was speechless, standing frozen with empty, lifeless eyes. Her grandmother, seeing her state, stepped forward protectively. Ethan Miller, you know perfectly well how devoted Olivia has been to you. She wanted to marry you 2 years ago, but you kept putting her off for your career, for your dancing. You left her to go tour in Europe right when she was about to propose. She made one drunken mistake and got pregnant, and you blame her for that? She's been consumed with guilt. She was even going to terminate the pregnancy because she was so terrified you'd leave her. She loves you more than anything, and you humiliate her and our family by running out of your own wedding. Have you no shame? Hearing her aggressive tone, Chloe's expression turned icy. Ethan was only 21 2 years ago. What's wrong with a man wanting to focus on his career before getting married? The Millers are a respected family in New York. Marrying a Carrington is hardly marrying up. So what if he turned her down a few times? Olivia is the one who couldn't control herself. Are you going to blame Ethan for that too? Did he pour the drinks down her throat? She was pregnant with another man's child and still tried to marry Ethan. That's called fraud. It was a wedding built on lies, so he left. What are you going to do about it? The old woman was so furious her face turned purple. She pointed a trembling finger at Chloe, but she was speechless, unable to form a rebuttal. Chloe let out a cold laugh, gave the grandmother and granddaughter one last icy glare, then rolled up the window and hit the gas. The roar of the engine sent the people blocking our path scattering like frightened birds. The sports car shot through the gates, which slammed shut behind us with a heavy thud. Chloe tossed the keys to her butler, telling him to have security clear the front gate. Then, with the angry mob still staring from outside, she led me into the mansion. The house was surprisingly empty. I had been mentally preparing myself to meet her family, so I couldn't help but ask, "Where's your grandmother?" Chloe pulled me down onto a sofa and winked, her tone light and playful again. She went to pick up some very important guests. They'll be back soon. I was confused. I thought her grandmother was in poor health. Why would she be out? But it wasn't my place to ask, so I kept quiet. Chloe disappeared into the kitchen for a few minutes, then returned and led me to the dining table. The table was covered in cakes and pastries, and my mouth watered, but I had a performance coming up and needed to watch my weight. Seeing my hesitation, Chloe placed a small slice of cake on my plate, coaxing me gently. I had a professional nutritionist prepare these. They're low-calorie and not too sweet. You've had a stressful day, you should eat something. If you do gain any weight, I promise I'll go to the gym with you to work it off. Okay. Her gentle persuasion worked on my empty stomach. I hesitated for another moment before my hunger won out. I took a small bite with my fork. It was delicious. Seeing me finally smile, the tension in Chloe's shoulders seemed to melt away. After we ate, Chloe and I took a walk in the back garden. As we walked slowly, I watched the sunset coloring the sky and suddenly asked her, "You knew about Olivia and Leo, didn't you?" Chloe raised an eyebrow. "She's my frenemy. How could I not know about a scandal like that?" I thought about how the two of them were always at each other's throats, and it made sense. "When did you find out?" I asked. Chloe explained. "The night it happened, they were at a hotel owned by a friend of mine. After that, I had someone keep an eye on Olivia. As soon as I heard she'd sent her assistant to buy a pregnancy test, I knew the whole story. I was surprised. You knew that long ago?" Chloe watched my expression. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Her tone was odd. "What are you thinking? Are you mad that I didn't tell you sooner?" I shook my head. "We weren't exactly close back then. It makes sense you wouldn't tell me. I'm just wondering, what's Leo's role in all of this?" Hearing the curiosity in my voice, Chloe seemed to think I was still hung up on Olivia, and a flash of irritation crossed her face. Her tone sharpened. "He has a moral compass, but it's a weak one. Even if Olivia initiated it that night, he's a grown man who slept with a woman without protection. He knew she was with you, but he let himself get entangled with her anyway. He's either an idiot or a predator." Chloe's words made me reconsider. Every time I'd seen Leo, he had seemed so timid and harmless that I'd assumed he was an innocent victim in all this. But she was right. If he were truly a good person, he wouldn't have let things get this messy. In this whole mess, Olivia was 70% to blame, and Leo was at least 20%. I was willing to accept the final 10% myself. Seeing the look of realization on my face, Chloe waved a hand in front of my eyes, demanding my attention. She cleared her throat and asked casually, trying to sound nonchalant, "You're married to me now, but you're still so interested in your ex. You're not still in love with her, are you?" I thought I detected a hint of jealousy in her voice, but I quickly dismissed it. Our marriage was a business deal. We hadn't even been married for a full day. She couldn't possibly have feelings for me, so why would she be jealous? I explained, "It's not that. I was just thinking that if Leo's timid persona is an act, he's a damn good actor. And if it's not an act, then I can only thank my lucky stars that I saw Olivia for who she really is before it was too late." My voice was completely detached, and Chloe's mood instantly brightened. So marrying her would have been jumping into a pit of fire. "What's marrying me, then?" I stared at her for a long moment before answering. "Your grandmother said it best, doing the world a favor by taking you off the market." She was not amused. She started counting on her fingers. "I'm beautiful, every family in our circle with a son wants me for a daughter-in-law, and I'm considered a prime catch. I've gone my whole life without a single scandal. What's not to be satisfied with?" Her earnestness made me laugh, and I started counting on my own fingers. "You're always busy with work, and I'm always traveling for performances. We'll barely see each other. And sure, you have no scandals, but the rumor is you're not interested in men at all. Did I marry you just to have a beautiful statue in my house?" Chloe didn't know how to respond to that. She just looped her arm through mine. "Afraid you married a pretty vase? Sounds to me like my husband is starting to fall for me." The atmosphere suddenly shifted, becoming charged. I looked away, a little uncomfortable, but kept up the banter. "Your grandmother was right. Marrying you was a huge sacrifice on my part." Just as I said it, the butler's voice came from behind us. "Miss Davenport, Mr. Miller. Your grandmother has returned with Mr. and Mrs. Davenport." My eyes widened, and I shot her a questioning look. Chloe just pushed me toward the living room, her voice full of mirth. "Well, I did just get married. Of course I have to tell my parents." After Leo fainted at the wedding, the Carringtons had him taken to the hospital. Fortunately, he was treated quickly and was fine. He lay in his hospital bed, staring out at the darkening sky, unable to shake the gloom of the day's events. Leo was in love with Olivia, but he knew the chasm between their worlds was too vast to cross. The only person Olivia had ever loved was me. Leo's presence in her life was nothing more than an accident. That accident was like a shooting star, brilliant for a moment but fleeting. He knew that once Olivia had the baby, she would cut him out of her life completely, and they would never see each other again. Leo knew this, but he couldn't stop himself from falling for her anyway. He always felt a deep sense of guilt toward me. If it weren't for him, I would have had a happy marriage. That's why he could never look me in the eye. When he saw me run from the wedding, a secret part of him was thrilled. It meant he might have a chance. But when I revealed the pregnancy, the weight of it all came crashing down, and he passed out. That evening, Olivia's grandmother visited, but he barely touched the dinner she brought. "I know what's on your mind," she said, "but you are the father of this child, and you need to be responsible. How can you take care of Olivia if you don't even eat?" Hearing the reproach in her tone, Leo felt a fresh wave of anxiety. He had no appetite, but he picked up his fork anyway. Mrs. Carrington nodded, satisfied, then picked up his medical chart, her frown deepening as she read. Leo's heart began to race. The old woman had always been kind to him, but he knew it was only because of the baby. If something was wrong with the pregnancy, he knew he would be held responsible. After getting the details from the doctor, Mrs. Carrington began to lecture him. Just then, Olivia walked in, and Leo looked at her like she was his savior. But seeing her haggard, despairing face, his hope turned to pity. "Miss Carrington, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Olivia was unmoved by his concern. She walked to his bedside and stated, her voice firm and resolute, "I'm terminating the pregnancy." They were both stunned. Leo stared in disbelief, while her grandmother exploded in fury. "As long as I am alive, you will not. That baby is a Carrington." A wild look entered Olivia's eyes. "It's my baby, and you have no right to tell me what to do." Her grandmother, so agitated she looked ready to have a heart attack, slammed her hand on the table. "Leo has that right. He is the father. The decision to keep this child or not rests with the two of you. The battle lines were drawn, and Leo was caught in the middle. Under the weight of their stares, he knew this baby was his only chance to stay in Olivia's life. He couldn't lose it, but the choice wasn't his to make. Her grandmother didn't know about the contract he'd signed, but he did. For months, he had done everything Olivia asked, just for the chance to be near her. Now, hearing her say she was going to end it, his world went dark. He summoned his courage and asked, "Ms. Carrington, I need a reason." Her grandmother's face was like stone. "I am keeping this baby." Olivia knew how stubborn her grandmother could be on this point. Not wanting to argue, she turned her gaze to Leo, her icy tones softening just a fraction. "It's the baby or Ethan. I choose Ethan." "I'm sorry." Hearing this and remembering the disaster at the wedding, her grandmother began to scold her for being so foolish. Leo felt like he'd been plunged into an ice bath, the blood freezing in his veins. The argument between grandmother and granddaughter escalated, with neither side backing down. Olivia, having lost all patience, called for a doctor and began asking about her options for a termination. The argument stressed her grandmother so much that she fainted, throwing the room into chaos. But Leo was like a ghost, his mind completely blank except for Olivia's words echoing in his head. "I choose Ethan." He wasn't surprised by Olivia's decision, but hearing it spoken aloud was still devastating. So later, when her grandmother woke up and assured him that she would make sure the baby was safe, he broke down and wept with relief. Having lost the battle, Olivia's heart was a wasteland of silent fury. A late-night phone call shattered my peaceful sleep. It was Olivia's voice on the other end, choked with sobs. "Ethan, where are you? Don't you want me anymore?" I was half asleep and couldn't make out the words, but Chloe, lying next to me, heard everyone. In the dim light, she looked over at my sleeping form, then gently took the phone and walked out onto the balcony. She stared at the caller ID for a long moment before answering. "Ms. Carrington, how much have you had to drink? You're calling my husband's phone. Shouldn't you be calling Mr. Vance?" Hearing Chloe's voice, Olivia screamed, "What right do you have to answer Ethan's phone?" Her fury instantly lifted Chloe's mood. Her voice was sweet with satisfaction. "The right of being the woman in his bed. You, on the other hand, Ms. Carrington, are interrupting a married couple's sleep. That's hardly appropriate, is it?" That was enough to make Olivia hang up in a rage. Chloe smiled, opened my contacts, and changed Olivia's name from Olivia to Ms. Carrington. Then she scrolled to her own contact and changed it from Chloe Davenport to my wife. After updating my social media relationship statuses, she closed the phone, satisfied. The next day, I woke up around noon to a text from Ryan. "Did you hear? Olivia got into a car accident last night. Drunk driving." I vaguely remembered a phone ringing in the night. I checked my phone. There was a 3-minute call from her at 3 a.m., but I had no memory of it. A pang of guilt hit me. Was that her calling for help after the crash? If so, ignoring it was a pretty cold thing to do. I quickly got ready and went downstairs. Chloe was already up and in the kitchen. The moment she saw me, she came over and asked what I wanted for breakfast. I hesitated for a moment before asking, "My phone rang last night. Do you remember that?" Hearing my question, Chloe's smile froze on her face. "I remember." I answered it. I immediately asked what Olivia had said. Seeing the urgency on my face, Chloe's voice turned sour. "Still so worried about her. Maybe I shouldn't have bothered crashing the wedding." I explained patiently. "Ryan just told me she was in an accident. I was worried her call last night was for help, and I felt bad for not answering, so I just wanted to know what happened." Chloe's expression softened back to normal. "She was just drunk dialing you to cause trouble," she said lightly. I told her off and hung up. The accident happened hours later, around dawn. It had nothing to do with us. My guilt finally subsided. Chloe watched my face carefully, then tested the waters. "Do you want to go to the hospital to see her?" She held her breath, her heart pounding, until I finally said, "No." A slow smile spread across her face. I caught her trying to hide it and asked, "Are you really that happy Olivia was in an accident?" She just mimicked my earlier tone. "She's not dead, is she? So why shouldn't I be happy?" Olivia was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I never sent a single text. Leo would bring her food, but he was too afraid to speak to her. After the wedding fiasco, she had gone back to completely ignoring him. No matter what he said or did, she wouldn't respond, sinking deeper into a listless depression. After being ignored a few times, her grandmother stopped visiting. Besides the doctors and nurses, Leo was the only one who came to her room, quietly taking care of her. On Olivia's birthday, her grandmother had a cake delivered. When Leo wheeled it into the room, Olivia, who hadn't spoken in nearly 2 weeks, finally broke her silence. "It's from your grandmother," Leo said quickly. The flicker of hope in Olivia's eyes died. "Get it out of here," she said, her voice flat with disappointment. "I don't want to see it." Leo felt indebted to her grandmother and tried to say a few words in her defense. But Olivia wasn't listening. She grabbed a water glass from her bedside table and threw it, knocking the cake onto the floor. The sudden violence startled Leo, and he stumbled, catching himself on a table. Olivia showed no remorse. The emotions Leo had been suppressing for weeks finally boiled over. He went to her bedside, his voice filled with anguish. "If you're going to be angry with me. Your grandmother is old, her health is fragile. She can't handle this kind of stress. Do you think because you have her on your side, you can use this baby to marry into my family? Don't delude yourself. The only man I will ever marry in this life is Ethan." Leo shook his head desperately. "I never wanted to marry you. I just wanted to be near you." Olivia ripped the four from her arm and stormed out of the room, and he hurried after her. They reached the stairwell, and Leo grabbed her arm, pleading, "You're not recovered yet. Please, go back to your room and rest." Without a second thought, Olivia violently shook him off. The force of her movement made her lose her balance. Olivia tumbled down the flight of stairs. She screamed, instinctively trying to shield her stomach, but it was no use. A trail of blood followed her down. A sharp, cramping pain shot through her abdomen. Only one thought crossed her mind: let the baby be gone. Finally, I can be free. Seeing Olivia fall, Leo took a few numb steps down the stairs. Their child, his last and only connection to her, was gone. Her grandmother wouldn't be able to force her anymore. And the one thing standing between her and me would be gone. Did this mean she could finally win me back? He screamed for help, hoping a doctor would hear. He walked down to where she lay and just stared. Their baby was gone. When Olivia woke up, her first words to him were an icy dismissal. "I'll pay you double what we agreed. In return, you will disappear from my life forever." He just looked at her, his heart breaking. Just as she had wished, Olivia lost the baby. Before she was even fully recovered, she drove to the Davenport estate. As her car stopped in front of the gates, she felt a wave of dizziness, her mind a jumble of emotions as she opened the door. Just then, the main door of the mansion opened. Chloe was sitting in a wheelchair, complaining to me about how much her sprained ankle hurt. Our driver hadn't arrived yet, and for some reason, Chloe was clinging to my arm. I turned to ask her what was wrong and saw a figure standing by the gate. It was Olivia. I hadn't seen her in weeks. She was skeletal, looking exhausted and frail. Our eyes met, and she immediately walked toward me, her voice trembling. "Ethan, can we please talk?" Before I could answer, Chloe let out a dramatic wail from her wheelchair. "My leg. I think your wife's leg is broken." She put heavy emphasis on the words, "your wife." I glanced down at her supposedly injured ankle, then looked back at Olivia, my voice flat. "I have to take her to the hospital. Some other time." Hearing that, Chloe's expression brightened considerably, though she kept up her complaints. "I am your wife. I sprained my ankle saving you, and you won't even call me your wife." Seeing us bickering like a married couple was like a bucket of ice water dumped over Olivia's head, chilling her to the bone. The driver pulled the car around, and as we were about to leave, she rushed forward and grabbed my arm, her voice pleading, "Just 5 minutes, Ethan. Please, just talk to me for 5 minutes." Chloe leaned out of the car, her voice sharp and cold. "Let go of him. That's my husband you're touching." Seeing that they were about to start fighting, I pulled my arm free from Olivia's grasp and pushed Chloe back into her seat. My tone left no room for argument. "Stay here and be quiet for 5 minutes. For once, Chloe didn't argue. I walked about 30 feet away, and Olivia hurried to catch up. "All right," I said coldly. "What is it?" Olivia stood beside me, looking nervous as she explained everything. She and Leo were finished, she said, and she'd lost the baby. A flicker of surprise crossed my face. "What happened to the baby?" Olivia, focused only on winning me back, rushed on. "I know you hated the idea of the baby, so I made it disappear. Ethan, anything you don't like, I can make it go away. Please, just forgive me." Seeing the unhinged look in her eyes, I instinctively took a step back. "That was your child, Olivia," I said in disbelief. "How could you be so heartless?" Fearing I'd misunderstood, she quickly tried to explain. "I didn't kill it. I fell down the stairs. I miscarried." As she said it, she was so tense that a muscle in her cheek twitched. My gut told me there was more to the story. From the car, I heard Chloe's impatient call, reminding me that my time was up. Olivia stared at me intently. Now all the obstacles are gone. Can we go back to how things were? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A human life, and to her, it was just an obstacle? I looked at her face and felt like I was seeing a stranger. We can't go back, I said. I'm married. I'm starting a new life. The words were like a dagger, twisting in her heart. When I got back in the car, Chloe's face was like a block of ice. She held up her watch in front of my face, her voice indignant. 7 minutes. You were 2 minutes over. Seeing her being so petty, I tried to placate her like a child. For those 2 minutes, I'll grant you 2 wishes. How about that? Her mood instantly shifted back to normal. She took my hand. First wish. Tell me everything you talked about. I told her everything, and her anger finally subsided. We went to the hospital, where the doctor said it was just a minor sprain and recommended some physical therapy. As I wheeled her to the clinic, she kept up her dramatic complaints. My mind was on Leo, but Chloe's constant chatter was making me antsy. I couldn't sit still, so I excused myself to the restroom. The moment I was out the door, I headed back to the main hospital building and found Olivia's room. The room was empty, but I found Leo in the hallway. He looked surprised. What are you doing here? Did you and Olivia get back together? I quickly corrected him. No, don't get the wrong idea. We're not back together. Leo's voice was hoarse with grief. Without the baby, she won't even look at me. He continued, his voice breaking. We'll never have anything to do with each other again. The baby is gone. Everything is gone. I considered telling him to just let her go, but hearing the raw pain in his voice, I knew that any advice would be unwelcome. The only thing I could do was listen. My phone rang. I glanced at Leo before answering. It was Olivia. Why did you burn everything? She screamed. All our memories? How could you be so cruel? I can't live without you, Ethan. Her voice was so shrill that Leo heard it from across the hall. He started to get up, agitated, so I quickly hung up and tried to calm him down. A second later, she called back. Leo wouldn't listen to reason. He grabbed the phone from my hand and put it on speaker. Olivia's voice filled the hallway. I will only ever be your wife, Ethan. If you won't give me one more chance, I'll jump from the roof of my house. Couldn't believe it. Olivia had become so unhinged she was threatening suicide. Hearing her words, Leo went into a panic and bolted from the hospital. I called 911 as I ran after him. I got downstairs just in time to run into a very annoyed-looking Chloe. She opened her mouth to complain, but I just grabbed her wheelchair and sprinted to the curb, hailing a cab. When she heard me give the driver the address of the Carrington estate, Chloe's face darkened even more. Her eyes were full of accusation. You're still not over her, are you? Olivia is threatening to jump off the roof, and Leo is on his way there. This is life or death, I said frantically. Chloe immediately dropped the jealous act and started making calls, trying to get information. When we got to the estate, we could see 2 figures on the edge of the roof. Below, on the rooftop patio, her grandmother had collapsed. I pushed open the door to the roof. On the ledge, both Olivia and Leo turned to look at me. I walked slowly to the edge and held out my hand to Leo. He stared at my hand, frozen. Beside him, Olivia saw my gesture, and the dark expression on her face intensified. I held my hand out for a full 3 minutes, but he didn't take it. I shook my head and spoke, my voice low and serious. Olivia wants to kill herself. Are you going to die with her? If she jumps, whether she lives or dies, her family will take care of her. But what about you? You're just a regular guy. You have a family, you have friends. Don't you care about them at all? Both of their expressions flickered. I kept my eyes on Leo, whose face was now streaked with tears. Is it worth it? I asked him gently. To die for someone who doesn't love you? My voice was quiet, but my words struck him like a bolt of lightning. He couldn't deny that I was right. In a raw, hoarse voice, Leo asked Olivia, did you ever, even for a moment, have feelings for me? She answered without hesitation. It was a moment of weakness. It wasn't love. Leo closed his eyes and stepped back from the ledge onto the roof. The paramedics rushed forward to guide him to safety. I let out a small sigh of relief before finally turning my attention to Olivia. I only said one thing to her. Are you coming down? She shook her head stubbornly. Her expression reminded me of the last time I tried to break up with her, when she'd threatened to kill herself then, too. I sat down on the roof, my body relaxing, my voice calm. This isn't the first time you've used suicide to threaten me. Do you think your life is that worthless? Or did you really think I'd be willing to die for you? My words seemed to throw her into a state of confusion. I could see images flashing through her mind. My helpless expression the last time she'd threatened this. My look of pure relief as I ran from our wedding. Every one of my expressions was burned into her memory, but none of them had the impact of my calm indifference now. She was Olivia Carrington. How could her life be worthless? Would I die for her? Never. Olivia had always known that my ambition, my art, was more important to me than anything, more important than her. That's why losing me drove her to this rooftop. For Olivia, this was her last, desperate gamble. But my expression told her she had already lost. Olivia stammered, "You promised you'd always give me another chance. You wrote it down and signed it. I went to find it today, but the butler said you burned it all. Ethan, why did you break your promise?" She was talking about a wish she'd made on her 15th birthday. She'd made me promise that no matter what happened, I would always give her one more chance. I'd agreed and even written it down and signed it for her. So many years had passed. I'd almost forgotten it existed until I burned it with everything else. I looked up at her, my voice still even. There was a condition to that promise. It was void if you ever had a change of heart. Can you stand there and tell me you never had feelings for Leo? My question struck her like a physical blow, and the color drained from her face. She collapsed to her knees on the rooftop, consumed by a wave of regret and pain. I slowly stood up and turned my back on her. As I turned, my eyes met Chloe's. She was staring at me with a cold expression, like a debt collector who'd come for payment. It was a terrible time to laugh, but I couldn't quite help myself. I looked up at the sky and shouted, my voice filled with a profound sense of release. "Olivia, I don't love you anymore. I don't love you. I don't love you. Whether you jump or not, whether you live or die, that is your choice, and it has nothing to do with me." Watching my retreating back, Olivia knew she had lost. She had no moves left to make. In that moment, she finally committed to the path she had chosen. She spread her arms wide and fell backward, like a caged bird finally, tragically, set free. The moment Olivia fell, her grandmother suffered a massive heart attack. They were both rushed to the hospital. After a day and a night of emergency care, one was dead and the other was permanently injured. The old woman had died, and Olivia was a paraplegic, paralyzed from the waist down. The extended Carrington family, upon hearing the news, descended on the corporate headquarters like vultures, plotting how to carve up the family fortune. The only person who waited outside the operating room was Leo. He dragged his own exhausted body out of the hospital to arrange the grandmother's funeral, and then he sat outside Olivia's room for 3 months straight. By the time Olivia was conscious again, the infighting at Carrington Industries was over. Her uncle, having secured the largest share of the company, visited the hospital once, leaving a check for $5 million. That $5 million, combined with the $4 million the family had previously paid him, was just enough to cover her medical bills. Leo used the last of his money to buy a wheelchair and take Olivia home, to a tiny, one-room apartment he'd rented in Queens. Olivia couldn't accept her new reality and was constantly threatening to end her life. One day, Leo handed her the stack of paid hospital bills. "You owe me for the life of our child," he said, his voice hard. "And you've spent every penny I had. You want to die now? What right do you have?" For once, Olivia was speechless. When my friend Ryan heard about the collapse of the Carrington empire, his gossip-loving heart couldn't take it anymore. He invited me out to dinner, and we talked about the whole sordid affair, both of us feeling a strange sense of melancholy about it all. In the middle of our conversation, Chloe called to check in, and I patiently gave her my status update. After I hung up, Ryan leaned in with a conspiratorial look. "You know that whole thing with Olivia and Leo? Do you know who my source was?" From his expression, I knew this was going to be good. I'd always wondered how he'd found out. Ryan leaned closer, gesturing toward my phone with his eyes. It was Chloe. At the time, I wondered why she cared so much. Now I see she was playing the long game. I was confused and pressed him to explain. "Chloe did it on purpose," Ryan continued. "She leaked the information to me so that I would tell you. She wanted you to see Olivia for who she really was and finally give up on her." I instinctively shot back, "That's impossible." Ryan looked at me like I was the densest person on the planet. "Why is it impossible? The day of the wedding, she told me herself she's been in love with you for over a decade. You've been married for months, and you seriously didn't know." I was completely stunned. Ryan was on a roll now. "Do you think she would have agreed to crash a wedding for someone she didn't love? Why do you think she dragged you straight to City Hall? She was afraid you'd change your mind and run." Hearing his logical breakdown, it all finally clicked into place. All those little moments of jealousy from Chloe after we got married. It wasn't my imagination. She was actually in love with me. That's why she was always competing with Olivia. All the signs were there. I was just too caught up in the wreckage of my last relationship to see them. Seeing the dawning comprehension on my face, Ryan's grin widened. He proceeded to tell me all the other little secrets he'd learned over the years. I was only now realizing that so many of the lucky breaks in my career, the little moments of good fortune, hadn't been luck at all. It had been Chloe, quietly looking out for me from the shadows. Listening to Ryan recount all these old stories, I felt a storm of emotions. That evening, Chloe arrived right on time to pick me up from the cafe. The moment she saw me, she smiled. "What took you so long? What terrible things was Ryan saying about me this time?" Hearing her usual teasing, I found myself thinking it was actually kind of cute. I smiled, mimicking her playful tone. "He said you have a secret crush on me. Is there any truth to that?" I leaned in close, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic on her face. She stammered, "Me? A secret crush? Don't be ridiculous. I do everything out in the open." I could tell instantly she was bluffing, which only made me want to tease her more. I put on a disappointed expression. "That's a shame. I was thinking that if it were true, we should have a proper wedding ceremony. But since it's not, I guess we can just forget it." At that, Chloe panicked, grabbing my hand. "I was lying. I do. I have been in love with you. You had no idea. So you owe me a wedding as compensation, don't you think?" Her eyes were sparkling as she said it. I remembered the look in her eyes at the cafe when I first proposed my plan. It was the same look. That was the moment my entire life had changed course, and I hadn't even realized it. Luckily, it wasn't too late. I pulled her into a hug, a real smile on my face. "Whatever kind of wedding you want, I'll give it to you," she beamed. "You can't take it back." I held her tighter. "Never.